Okay, it's time. I've had so many people ask me when I'm getting my Foo Fighters review out, but I needed to wait, just to listen to it a couple more times. I probably gave it about 3 or 4 spins by now, and I'm ready. So let's get started. This is JC Rock and Metal Reviews. My name is John, and if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. I upload every day. I do new release reviews, I do rankings, I do a lot more, everything within the rock and metal world. If you'd like to support my channel, please check my video description. I have a few Amazon links if you'd like to make any purchases and things like that. Okay, let me get into it. Actually, first, before I talk about the Foo Fighters, I'm going to talk about the band Kiss. So Kiss was a rock band. In the 70s, they were a hard rock band, very big, very popular. But in the late 70s, they had a string of successful albums. But they released an album called Dynasty. And this was an album that some people hated because they changed their sound. It was more of like a disco album. They had a really big hit with I Was Made for Lovin' You. And they had a Rolling Stones cover and a couple other more like disco-oriented tracks, but they didn't lose their sound. The guitars were still there. They still had that Kiss sound and the Kiss essence. And this is one of my favorite albums of the entire Kiss catalog, maybe like in the top 3 or something like that. So that kind of reminds me a little bit of the Foo Fighters' Medicine at Midnight. So that's why I'm going to talk about that right now. According to Dave Grohl, he said this album sounds a lot like David Bowie's Let's Dance album. So it was more in the direction of that. And I agree, it still has that Foo Fighters sound. You still have the guitars, you still hear like the grungy influences, more like a little laid back. But they added a lot more. They added like a lot of female vocals, to some more stringed instruments. So they actually made a really good album by adding things. They didn't really take away any of the grunginess. It's just it's a lot lower in the mix. But the songs are different, they're memorable, they're good. Their last album was Concrete and Gold. This was released in 2017. And this album, Concrete and Gold, was pretty much a good album. After that, they kind of took a little bit of a break. And then they started recording this album. This album has pretty much been done for about a year, but they wanted to hold it off, I think, because of the pandemic and all that, and they wanted to tour. Now, they recorded this album in a house that they rented in Encino, Los Angeles. And it's pretty cool reading about it because they had a lot of strange occurrences, things like guitars being detuned and different things happening. They have, there are all a lot of strange incidences, and they filmed it. But they can't really release it because they had a non-disclosure agreement. But it was pretty cool learning about that, how the album, it went smoothly, but there were all a lot of strange things happening. And again, it's kind of a different musical direction, but it's a good musical direction, so I really enjoyed it. So with that being said, I'm going to go through this track by track. Okay, the first track is called Making a Fire. Starts out with a grungy guitar riff, but it immediately just changes. You hear these female background vocals, and it gets more of a poppy song. It's not a bad thing. I mean, I still like it. You still hear the signature Foo Fighters guitars mixed in, but they're a little lower in the mix. But there's still some guitar present. You hear some cool guitar riffs, so really like it. Making a Fire is track number 1. Track 2 is Shame Shame. So this was the first single. Came out 2 months ago, so this was the single that let everyone know about the overall tone of the album. In the end, it was the song that really sounded almost unlike anything on the album. It's very a different. They used a drum loop. You hear a different additional stringed instruments in the background. But it's a cool song. Probably you've all heard it already. But it's not a really bad thing. It's just the least Foo Fighters sounding song on the album. Track 3 is Cloud Spotter. So this is a good song. Now the riff reminds me of Jimi Hendrix. It just has that sound to it. And I read a few comments online saying that the album reminded them a little bit like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And at first I didn't hear it, but now listening to the song again, I do kind of hear the Chili Peppers a little in the song, and that's a good thing. I really like the Chili Peppers. That's a good band. Now when he sings this swing chorus, this one reminded me a lot of Cherry Pie by Warrant. I thought that was pretty cool. The female backing vocals, they're very present on this track, and it really does add to the song. You know, it is more of like a poppy, like a funky song, but there's also like an awesome breakdown in the song that kind of like would satisfy the headbanger if you're a metal fan who like is listening to this album. Track 4 is Waiting on a War. So this is the third single and probably the most Foo Fighters soundings on the album. It's an acoustic ballad, and I think this song will probably go down as one of their classics. There's a lot of like stringed instruments, creates a very nice atmosphere in the background. Dave Grohl's talking about, singing about, you know, like the title says, Waiting on a War. It's a really nice, beautiful song. So that's track 4. Track 5 is Medicine at Midnight. This is the title track. Now this one sounds probably the most like David Bowie-ish of all the songs. It has that like memorable bass line. Probably the most like danceable track on the album. You know, you hear the guitars, has a pretty cool guitar solo, and the female backing vocals are still present, so I think that really adds to the song. So track 6 is No Son of Mine. So this is the second single, and probably the like heaviest song on the album. So supposedly it's a tribute to Lemmy. So we have like a heavy rock song here. It's not really a long song, but it has like a repetitive, like a verse and a chorus. It's a very memorable song. You hear the female backing vocals, but I think they're very like mixed, very low. So again, this becomes more of like a heavy rock song. Track 7 is Holding Poison. So this is sounds a little bit more like the classic Foo Fighters. You've got the loud guitars, but it does have more of like an 80s pop. They use a lot of like percussion effects. What I like most is at the 3-minute mark, there's like this breakdown, and it almost has this like psychedelic rock feel. You gotta like listen to it to know what I'm talking about. But it's a very catchy and memorable song. Track 8 is Chasing Birds. So this is a very soft rock, 70s style ballad. You hear a little bit of like a Beatles influence, a lot of like clean and acoustic guitars. Probably be one of the more memorable songs on the album. I really like this one a lot, and I think this will probably go down as one of their classics. And the last song on the album is Love Dies Young. So this one starts off with like a galloping riff, kind of like Heart's Barracuda, but it turns into more of like an 80s style pop song. You still hear the guitars, but the main riff reminds me of something like the band The Cure. I thought it was like that. You hear the female vocals mixed a little lower in the background, but all in all, I feel it's a strong album closer. Okay, so that's it. In conclusion, I enjoyed the album, like I said in the beginning. Some fans might not like it. Some fans who really are more into the Foo Fighters, like grungy years, you know, from their first album, or The Color and the Shape. I mean, maybe you won't like it, but if you like, you know, if you're a little more open-minded, you'll definitely like it. So I'm going to give this album a 9 out of 10. I think it's a good album. It's different, but it's good different. So I definitely recommend checking it out. So let me know in the comments, what do you think of this album? I'm pretty sure you've heard it. You know, it's available on streaming sites, and YouTube has visualizer videos and all that. So let me know what you think. If you're interested in learning about you know, how Nirvana ended and how the Foo Fighters recorded their album, I'm going to link my video to my versus video of their Nirvana versus Foo Fighters. So you could check that out, and I'll link another video of mine if you want to see some of my other content. Other than that, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.